The rain fell heavy on a forgotten colony town when a tired scientist stumbled upon something impossible, an injured creature of legend, glowing blue eyes staring through the storm. Hunted by shadows, marked by danger, and carrying a secret powerful enough to change the fate of worlds, one choice would decide whether it lived or vanished forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The storm had a way of making the small colony town feel like the edge of the world. Rain hammered the streets before sunrise, blurring every shape into shadows and streaks of light. Nora Linden gripped the steering wheel tighter, her windshield wipers slapping furiously against the glass. The roads were empty, and the only sound was the endless rhythm of rain striking metal and pavement. It was just after 5 in the morning, and Nora was already late for her shift at the Atmospheric Research Hub. Her job was important, but the storm did not care. Visibility was poor, and every turn felt like driving into a wall of water. She sighed, thinking of the endless reports, the hours of monitoring alien ecosystems, and the deadlines that seemed to multiply by the day. New Haven Colony had always been more functional than beautiful. Most of the buildings were prefabricated blocks, plain and gray, scattered along the Pacific coastline. Still, there was a quiet pride in the way humans had built something lasting here. Surrounded by old forests and constant rain, the settlement felt like both a frontier and a relic. Nora pulled into a fuel station on the edge of town. The bright neon sign flickered against the storm, casting a tired glow on the empty lot. This was Mr. Henley's place, the last human-run station for miles. He never trusted alien technology, and he claimed the advanced fuel cells made his skin itch. Nora smiled faintly at the thought. Some people just held on to their ways no matter how fast the world changed. She parked under the weak shelter of the pump canopy. Her car was running low, and she desperately needed coffee. The shop's lights buzzed softly inside, promising warmth and caffeine. But before she could open the car door, something caught her eye. Against the side of an old vending unit sat a shape that didn't belong. At first, she thought the storm was playing tricks on her tired eyes. She leaned closer, squinting through the sheets of rain. There, curled into itself like a lost child, was a creature the size of a dog. Its scales shimmered faintly in the dim light, copper and bronze under the falling rain. 2 small horns curved gently from its head, and thin wings hung limp at its sides. Nora's breath caught as her gaze met its eyes, large, round, and glowing faintly blue. They did not glare or threaten. They only looked empty, as if the creature carried a sorrow too heavy for its small frame. Nora whispered under her breath, almost afraid to believe what she saw. She had seen images in her research files before. Juvenile dragons, classified as Draconis juveniles, were rare and supposedly kept under strict protection. They were living generators, capable of producing enough energy to power entire city blocks. Their adult counterparts were said to grow taller than buildings, wings wide enough to blot out the sky. But here, in the pouring rain of a forgotten fuel station, sat one of these extraordinary beings, cold, injured, and alone. Her first instinct was to remember her training. Protocol said to never approach an unidentified specimen without protective gear. Protocol said to call authorities immediately. Protocol said to keep your distance. But her heart told her something else. The creature trembled, its thin body showing patches where scales had broken away. One wing bent awkwardly, its membrane torn, and every breath it drew came out as a shudder, small clouds of steam against the cold air. Nora thought of her childhood, of the stuffed toy she once carried everywhere. She thought of her younger days rescuing stray animals, the way her heart always ached for the wounded and the weak. This wasn't a dangerous specimen. This wasn't a line in a scientific report. This was a baby, lost and suffering. Nora slowly opened her car door, pulling her raincoat tight around her shoulders. She stepped out into the storm, water soaking her hair and dripping into her eyes. She crouched a few feet away, speaking softly, her voice nearly lost in the rain. "Hey there," she said gently. "You're not supposed to be here, are you?" The dragon's eyes flickered, following her movement. It didn't growl, didn't lash out, didn't even move much at all. It only watched, exhausted, as if weighing whether to trust this stranger in the storm. Nora extended her coat slowly, holding it out like a shield. "You're safe now," she whispered. "I won't hurt you." Just then, the low rumble of an engine echoed down the main street. Nora looked up, her heart pounding. A black vehicle rolled slowly past, its tinted windows concealing the passengers. On the side, a silver emblem gleamed, the mark of the consortium's Secure Transport Division. She had heard the stories. Their recovery missions were efficient, brutal, and silent. Once they found what they were looking for, it never came back. The vehicle crawled forward, headlights sweeping across the wet pavement before disappearing into the storm. Nora looked back at the small dragon. Its eyes blinked slowly, and it let out a weak sound, halfway between a whimper and a sigh. She knew this was the moment. She could call it in, stay safe, and let the professionals handle it. Or she could act on instinct, risk everything, and protect the fragile life in front of her. Without giving herself more time to think, Nora slipped off her coat, wrapped it carefully around the trembling creature, and lifted it into her arms. It was lighter than she expected, fragile bones pressing against her chest, warmth barely noticeable under the chill of the rain. The dragon gave a faint purr-like hum, closing its eyes as though relieved. "We're getting you out of here," Nora whispered, hurrying back to her car. She placed the small creature gently on the back seat, turned the heater to full, and glanced at the rearview mirror. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the car, a new secret had been born, one that would change everything. The road twisted through the wet forest like a ribbon of dark glass. Rain poured steadily, beating against the windshield as Nora Linden gripped the wheel, her eyes darting to the rearview mirror. In the back seat, wrapped in her coat, the small dragon shifted weakly, its breath fogging the air. The hum of the car's heater mixed with the sound of the storm, creating a strange cocoon of warmth inside, while the world outside drowned in rain. Nora's heart raced with every mile. She knew what she was carrying was priceless, dangerous, and forbidden. But she could not ignore the way the creature pressed against the seat, curling tighter with every bump in the road. Its copper scales glistened faintly, each one marked with scratches and missing patches. She thought again of how light it felt in her arms, as if its bones were made of hollow glass instead of strength. She reached for her phone, her hands trembling slightly as she scrolled through her contacts. There was only one person she could call. His name was Milo Grant. Milo had once been a medic for the colony's defense forces, treating wounds from both human and alien alike. After leaving the service, he had set up a small animal clinic at the edge of New Haven. People said he was eccentric, too blunt, and too secrety, but Nora trusted him. He had a way of seeing life in all its forms as something worth protecting. She pressed the call button. Her voice hushed as soon as he answered. "Milo, I need your help. Can you meet me at your clinic right now?" His reply was quick, his tone sharp but curious. "What kind of help? The usual, or the kind that gets me in trouble?" Nora glanced back at the dragon, its wings twitching faintly in its sleep. "The second kind," she admitted. A pause, then a dry laugh. "Outstanding. I'll put the lights on." 15 minutes later, Nora pulled into the small parking lot of Milo's clinic. The building was modest, with a weather-beaten sign and a single light glowing through the storm. Milo stood under the awning, tall, broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray. He looked like someone who belonged in the wilderness, not in a sterile laboratory. The moment Nora stepped out, he narrowed his eyes at the bundle in her backseat. When she pulled the coat assy, his breath caught. "That's not a stray dog, Nora." "I know," she said softly. "Can you help it?" He leaned closer, his experienced hands gentle as he lifted the creature out. It whimpered faintly, pressing its head against his chest. "This is a draconis juvenile," he murmured. "Do you have any idea what this means?" "I know enough," Nora answered. "I found it injured. They were looking for it. I couldn't just leave it there." Inside the clinic, the smell of disinfectant and warm cedar mixed together. Milo laid the dragon on a padded examination table under bright lights. The creature shifted uncomfortably, its scales glinting in sharp detail. Nora's breath caught as she saw just how bad its injuries were. Milo's trained hands moved quickly. He examined the bent wing, tracing the fractures with care. "Broken in multiple places," he muttered. "And burns, look here." He pointed to long scorched marks along its side. "Energy weapons did this. Someone shot at it." Nora's stomach tightened. Who would hurt something like this? Milo shook his head grimly. Not hurt, control. They see it as property, not as life. He ran a scanner along the creature's neck, and the device beeped faintly. A red glow pulsed beneath the skin. "Tracker," he said, his tone heavy. "Standard issue. They'll know exactly where it is and where you are." Nora's chest tightened. "Can you remove it?" Milo hesitated, his eyes thoughtful. "Yes, but once I do, we'll both be fugitives. The signal will alert them. They'll come looking." Nora looked down at the small dragon. It blinked slowly, meeting her gaze with exhausted blue eyes. Something stirred inside her, something she couldn't ignore. "Do it," she said firmly. Milo nodded once. He pulled on gloves, his movements steady. As he prepared his tools, he spoke softly, almost to himself. "These creatures are worth more than entire space programs. Their energy cells make nuclear power look like child's play. And here one is, broken and discarded." Nora brushed her hand gently against the dragon's scales. They were rough under her fingers, warm in patches, cool in others. The creature made a faint humming sound, a vibration that resonated through the table. It wasn't just a sound. It was a plea for survival. The storm outside howled louder, rattling the windows as Milo began his work. His instruments glinted under the lights, and sweat gathered on his brow despite the cool air. The dragon tensed, but remained still, as if it understood. Nora stood close, whispering softly, "You're safe now. We'll take care of you." For a moment, the only sounds were the steady rhythm of rain and the faint hum of machines. Suddenly, headlights cut across the window blinds, throwing stripes of light into the room. Nora froze, her pulse quickening. Outside, an engine idled. Shadows moved against the curtain, figures stepping from a vehicle. Milo didn't look up, but his jaw tightened. He said, quietly. Nora's breath caught. Fear and determination collided inside her. The fragile creature lay between them, its fate now tied to theirs. The door rattled under the knock of strangers. Voices called out, demanding entry, their words cold and official. Nora's hand hovered over the dragon, her heart pounding. She knew this was only the beginning. The knock on the clinic door came again, harder this time. Rain hissed against the windows, muffling the voices outside, but Nora could still make out the words. Open up, transport division, official business. Her breath caught as she looked toward Milo. His hands never stopped moving, but his eyes flickered to hers with unspoken urgency. Keep still, he whispered, leaning over the small dragon. If they get inside, we're finished. Nora pressed her back against the wall, heart pounding in her chest. The dragon stirred faintly on the table, its glowing blue eyes flickering open. It let out a low hum. Dot, a trembling sound that vibrated through the floor. Outside, boots splashed in puddles as more figures circled the building. The storm masked some of the noise, but the glow of their headlights pushed through the blinds, painting lines of white across the room. Milo leaned close to the creature. Hold on, little one, just a bit more. With steady hands, he eased the scanner across its neck. The faint red light pulsed faster, as if the tracker sensed its impending removal. Sweat rolled down his temple, but his focus never wavered. The pounding on the door turned into the sound of metal tools. They were trying to force their way in. Nora's throat tightened. They're not going to wait, she whispered. Milo's jaw clenched. Then we move fast. He pressed the extractor tool against the dragon's neck. A hiss filled the air, followed by a sharp spark of light. The creature tensed, its body trembling. The tracker came loose with a sharp click, landing in Milo's palm. Immediately, the device flared bright red, emitting a piercing tone. Nora flinched. They'll know, she said. They already know, Milo replied grimly. Without hesitation, he shoved the tracker into a lead container, slamming the lid shut. That will buy us a few minutes. Maybe. The dragon let out a sudden pulse of energy, a shockwave that rippled across the room. The lights flickered, and the machines sputtered. Nora gasped as her skin prickled with static. Even weakened, the creature carried a power, unlike anything she had ever seen. Boots crashed against the door again. Milo pulled the blinds closed, plunging the room into shadows. We can't stay here, he said firmly. Grab what you can. We take the back exit. Nora quickly lifted the dragon, wrapping it tighter in the coat. It was trembling, but alive, humming faintly against her chest. She followed Milo through the narrow hallway, the floor creaking under their hurried steps. They slipped out a back door into the pouring rain. The alley was dark, the storm covering their movement. Behind them, the front door of the clinic finally gave way with a crash. Voices shouted orders, and heavy boots stormed inside. Milo guided Nora down the slick path toward the forest line. We need cover. They'll sweep the streets, but they won't risk the woods in this weather. The trees loomed tall, branches dripping water like a curtain. They pushed through the undergrowth, their breath heavy in the cold night air. The dragon shifted in Nora's arms, releasing a faint glow that lit the path around them. Dim that light, little one, Milo muttered under his breath. You're going to get us caught. But the glow did not fade. Instead, it pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, guiding them deeper into the forest. Nora glanced down, meeting its tired eyes. It's leading us, she whispered. Milo gave a short laugh, bitter but amazed. Or it's just trying to stay alive. For nearly an hour they moved, slipping between ducking under branches, and splashing through streams swollen with rain. Behind them, faint beams of flashlights cut through the woods. Their pursuers had not given up. Finally, they stumbled into a small clearing. A broken structure stood there, an abandoned outpost from the early days of the colony. Its roof sagged, and moss crawled over the walls, but it offered shelter. They ducked inside, dripping and exhausted. Milo set down his bag, pulling out bandages and medical supplies. This isn't much, but it will have to do. Nora laid the dragon on a blanket, brushing damp hair from her face. The creature whimpered, curling tighter. She pressed her hand against its warm side. "You're safe for now," she whispered. Milo examined the burns along its body. "These aren't random injuries," he said quietly. "Someone targeted it with precision. Energy weapons like this are used for capture, not defense." Nora's stomach twisted. "So they hunted it down." Milo nodded grimly. "And if it escaped, that means there are more. Maybe a family, maybe an entire group." Nora looked at the dragon, her thoughts racing. Or maybe it's the only one left. Thunder rolled across the sky, shaking the fragile walls of the outpost. The storm showed no signs of ending. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. Outside, faint voices echoed, moving through the forest. The hunters were close. Nora glanced at the dragon again. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting a depth she couldn't explain. It wasn't just an animal. It was something more. "Whatever this is," she said softly, "we can't give it back to them, not after what they've done." Milo met her gaze, his expression hard. "Then we'd better be ready, because once they realize we've gone dark, they won't stop hunting us." The dragon shifted, letting out a low hum that filled the small outpost with warmth. It was a sound of trust, fragile but real. And in that mom, Nora knew the truth. They weren't just saving a creature. They were standing against forces far bigger than themselves. The storm raged on outside, but inside the broken outpost, a fragile alliance had formed between a woman, a weary medic, and a small dragon whose survival might change everything. The night stretched long inside the abandoned outpost. Wind howled through the cracks in the roof, and the rain drummed against the moss-covered walls. Nora Linden sat near the small dragon, her hand resting lightly on its copper scales. Its breathing had steadied, though every rise and fall of its chest carried a weight of exhaustion. Milo Grant moved quietly around the room, setting up a makeshift station with whatever supplies he could salvage from his bag. "We can't stay here," Milo said finally, his voice low. "They'll sweep the woods until they find us. This is just a pause, not safety." Nora nodded, though her eyes stayed fixed on the small creature. "We'll find somewhere else. But we can't keep running forever." The dragon opened its eyes, faint blue light shining through the dimness of the outpost. It let out a low hum, soft but steady, filling the space with an odd calm. Nora smiled faintly. "It's stronger than we thought." Milo crouched beside the table where the creature lay. "Strong, yes, but still fragile. If it releases another surge like before, it might not survive the strain. And if it doesn't, neither will we." Nora looked at him sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying this isn't just about keeping it hidden. This is about deciding what its future will be. Do we protect it for as long as we can, or do we let it go?" The question hung heavy in the air. Outside, faint voices echoed once again. The hunters were closer. The tracker's last signal had brought them into these woods, and time was slipping away. Before Nora could answer, the dragon stirred. It pushed itself weakly onto its legs, spreading its wings just enough to show their jagged fractures. Its body glowed faintly with warmth, and for a moment, the entire room seemed to pulse with its energy. Nora rose to her feet, realization dawning on her. It's not just surviving, it's waiting. It knows something we don't. Milo frowned. Waiting for what? Thunder cracked across the sky, shaking the ground beneath them. In that moment, headlights cut through the forest. Beams of light pierced the trees, moving closer. Engines rumbled. They had found the outpost. Milo's hand went to his knife, his voice steady but grim. "We hold them off as long as we can. You keep the dragon safe." But before he could move, the creature released a deep hum that built into a resonant wave. Blue light spread from its body, illuminating every corner of the outpost. Nora shielded her eyes as the glow expanded, spilling out into the forest. The hunters stumbled. Their voices panicked as their equipment crackled with static. Sparks shot from their weapons, and the lights on their vehicles flickered out. The storm itself seemed to bend to the pulse of energy, rain freezing in midair for a fraction of a second before crashing down again. Nora's breath caught. "It's protecting us!" The dragon turned its gaze to her. There was no fear in its eyes now, only determination. It moved toward the broken wall of the outpost, wings dragging, but ready. "Nora," Milo said softly, "this is it. This is the choice." She stepped forward, her heart pounding. She could try to keep it with her, to fight for it, to hide it again. But deep inside, she knew the truth. The creature was never meant for cages or dark corners. It was meant for the sky. Together, she and Milo pushed open the outpost's rooftop hatch. The storm raged above them, clouds swirling, but the horizon glowed faintly with the first light of dawn. Nora crouched beside the dragon, her hand on its back. "You're free now," she whispered. "Go where they can't touch you." The creature hesitated for a moment and spread its wings. Though still scarred, they caught the wind, trembling but strong. With one powerful leap, it launched into the storm. Lightning split the sky as its body glowed bright, a streak of copper and blue against the gray clouds. The hunters outside froze, their weapons useless against the burst of energy that rolled across the forest. Some retreated, others shielded their faces, but none could stop what they were witnessing. Nora and Milo stood in silence, rain soaking their clothes as they watched the dragon rise higher and higher. Its hum echoed through the air, vibrating in their bones. For one brief moment, the storm broke and sunlight poured through the clouds. The dragon soared into the light, its figure growing smaller until it vanished beyond the horizon. Nora lowered her head, tears mixing with the rain on her cheeks. "We did the right thing," she said quietly. Milo placed a hand on her shoulder. "We gave it a chance. That's more than most would have done." The forest settled into silence again, the hunters retreating into the shadows, unwilling to pursue further. The storm eased, leaving the air heavy but calm. Nora looked toward the sky, the memory of the dragon's eyes still burning in her mind. She knew their lives would never return to normal. But she also knew that somewhere out there, a creature once broken and hunted was flying free. The dawn spread across the colony, painting the wet streets in gold. And in that light, Nora felt something she hadn't in years: hope.